Hello and welcome to another video from me, Rough Swordsman, Wargamer. It's an open the box and it's an unboxing of a brand new game, fresh off GMT's P500, and it is Prime Minister, a game designed by Paul Hellyer and something quite different by the looks of it. So let's see what's all this about. In 1837, Queen Victoria begins her long reign over the United Kingdom, a country split between liberals and conservatives. Liberals strive for social progress, including repeal of the Corn Laws to help feed the working classes, expansions of the electorate to create a real democracy, and home rule for Ireland. Conservatives want to slow the pace of change, while advancing their own agenda to maintain order, protect traditional values, and secure the empire. Her Majesty occasionally interferes in politics, but it's the Prime Minister who really governs the country and sets the political agenda. 10 different Prime Ministers served during Victoria's reign, with varying degrees of success. Now it's your turn to experience Victorian political life, taking on the role of a historical politician. Will you make your mark as a backbencher, stir up trouble as a wily opposition leader, or successfully govern the world's greatest empire as Prime Minister? Wow, so in Prime Minister, 1 to 4 players vie for political power and prestige by campaigning for public support, selecting and debating bills, pursuing official appointments, recruiting influential Victorians as supporters, garnering favour with the Queen, and, when the time is right, challenging other players for their leadership roles. Gameplay is partly cooperative with shifting alliances, but only one player can win by holding the Prime Minister's seat at the game's end. In addition to the standard multiplayer game, Prime Minister includes a dozen scenarios of varying length and a clockwork system featuring automated opponents for solitaire play. So, in the box we have 5 player aids, 4 player mats, 1 game board, 1 overlay for game board, 54 wooden markers, 172 playing cards, 1 clockwork player aid, 1 clockwork player mat, 56 clockwork cards, multiplayer and solitaire rulebooks. The credits here, as I mentioned earlier, game design Paul Hellyer, art design and cover art Domhnall Hegarty, and development Ken Kuhn. Players 1 to 4, and on the game scales we've got a complexity of only 3 out of 9, so it should be easy for me to learn, and solitaire suitability, of course, because of this clockwork system, is high at 9 out of 9. Right, let's get the shrink wrap off. The shrink wrap is off. It's a sturdy GMT 3-inch box. Let's get it open. Let's open the box. First thing we see are a couple of booklets. We've got the multiplayer rulebook and the clockwork rulebook, which is for solo play and for 2-player cooperative play, I think. So let's have a look at these. Here's the multiplayer rulebook, and it is 67 pages. Crikey. Full colour, of course, matte paper. But if we look at the table of contents, we see that it looks like the rules only go up to page 22. And we've got a sort of 20-page example of play there, so don't panic too much. So we'll quickly go through this. So introduction, general course of play, the components, politicians for the Conservatives and Liberals, how to distinguish the two, the player mats. So it's going through all the bits you need. How to set it up, the game board, election projection board, the card decks, and how to set this up. So quite a nice large font, not too much in the way of verbiage because there's lots of pictures. And I do like the fact that this paper is sort of off-white colour, which gives it a contemporary feel. Supporters, there's the Prince of Wales. Event deck. Bill resolution phase, the election phase. So even though it's, it says, not a difficult game, there's quite a lot going on. Uncertainty, victory, and introduction to the scenarios. And that's it, 22 pages. And there are different scenarios in this. So this is a 4-player tournament game, a nation in crisis. Scenario 2, home rule for Ireland. Trying to get the act through to make home rule for Ireland possible. Scenario 3, the Queen's favour. So they're all varying lengths, 9 rounds, about 45 to 60 minutes. This one's a 1 to 2 hour scenario. Up to 15 rounds, players 2 to 4. So it's, depending on who you've got playing, it seems like there's a scenario for you. The Second Reform Act. Fractured Parliament. This one, the Liberal Unionist, is for 3 players. That looks like it. This is the guide to victory point pooling, giving you sort of hints how to play. And then this big example of play. So you set it up and off you go. This is what most of the rest of the booklet is. So we won't show you that in detail. Split up into the different rounds, so it's taking you through a whole game by the look of it. Yeah, round 11. Round 13. And then some optional rules. Alternate vote tracker, we've got some different wooden pieces for that. Credits at the back. And little index. A lot there. That's your multiplayer rulebook. And then there's the clockwork rulebook, which is what Paul is calling his AI, if you like. So this is for solo play or if 2 people are playing cooperatively. And this is 55 pages, but once again, as you'll see, there is a comprehensive example of play that goes on for 22 pages. So once again, to work this system is about 25 pages because there are 2 clockwork systems, one simpler than the other. Once you've learnt clockwork system 1, you just have to add on a little bit more. And the good thing is about these, it looks like, is they're completely separate systems with their own rule book. And it's not a case of reading this but then referring back to the multiplayer rule book to get a full understanding of what's going on. Having a quick look through this, it's its own thing, so you only need to read this if you want to play solo. So once again, introduction, general course of play and the components list, going through the 2 sides, liberal and conservative, the politicians and the clockwork politicians. The player mats, because the opposition will have its own clockwork mat as it's playing against you. The game board and how it all works. So it's treating you like you haven't read the other rule book. You just want to play solitaire, so this will get you there. How to use the markers. There's those alternate bill markers we saw in the other one, and the card decks, but we've got 2 clockwork decks included, which the bot, if you like, will use. Clockwork System 1, how to set up. Game standards, how to understand the iconography, and then the sequence of play, and then that's broken down into more detail. So bill selection, off we go. Bill selection phase, then it's the action phase, supporters and clockwork supporters, the event cards, how to deal with those, challenging. I think, if I remember rightly, in at least in Clockwork 1, you pick 2 politicians. So if one turns out to be rubbish, you can replace them. Yes, System 1 only. You can replace it with the other one, but that's it. You can't do it anymore. And the bot can challenge you if your standing drops too low. And that, I think, ends the game. There's an election phase. There are no bills left on the board. The Prime Minister holds an election, or can skip it, I think. There's this election marker we'll show you. And that gives him a bit more time, if he's having a bit of trouble, to sort himself out. Uncertainty, the end game, victory in System 1, and then the sort of add-on for Clockwork System 2. These are the cards that run the Clockwork opposition. Had a challenge in System 2, elections, government changeover, and victory. And then there are Clockwork scenarios. I think this one is the one they recommend you try first. So we've got Rebuilding the Party with Sir Robert Peel, the chap that got the police force going in this country, which is why, amongst their more kinder nicknames, they're called Bobbies. There's a Robert Peel, or Peelers. I don't think Peelers is used much nowadays. There he is. Scenario 2, Climbing the Greasy Pole. 3, Morality Play. These are the bills. Oh, your wife is divorcing you. Oh dear. Law and Order, another scenario. Scenario 5, the Liberal Unionist. This is purely a solitaire one. These, I think, can be played, some of these can be played cooperatively. Yeah, 1 or 2. Let's check the others. Yeah, 1 clockwork, 1 human. Oh, 2 clockwork politicians, 1 human player. 1 or 2. That's a solo one. This is purely solo. Not sure what the difference is. If that only has 1 human player, isn't it solo? But anyway, there may be an explanation for that. And then we've got a great big 20-odd page example of play again. So no excuses. And this game is quite different from our war games we get from GMT. Lots of pictures telling you exactly what's going on. And then at the end, some optional rules, that alternate vote tracker. and an index on the back of that. There we are. Them's the clockwork rules. And then there are player aids. We've got one copy of this double-sided player aid, but 4 of these. On this side we've got the iconography explaining all the symbols. And this one is about elections. And on the other side of those we've got resolving bills and the parliamentary order. Then we've got this player mat for the Prime Minister, showing you his standing, and your standing determines how many action points or action cubes you get. On the other side of this is the side you use. It says here Liberals use this side in a 3-player game, but I think, if I remember rightly, you can use this side if you want an easier time, for instance when you're learning the game. And here's a player mat for the opposition leader. The Prime Minister player mat is used, I think, in both multiplayer and clockwork situations. This is used just in the multiplayer situation. And then we've got that Liberal use this side in a 3-player game. So what happens if you're playing 3 or 4 players? Well, here are 2 sort of mini player mats for them to use. On one side it says government backbencher, and on the other side, yes, you've guessed it, the opposition backbencher. This mat, I believe, is used when playing with those optional rules, with those other wooden pieces, single-sided. And then if you're playing solo, you do need the bot to have its own opposition leader playmat, and here it is. And on the other side is the Prime Minister clockwork player mat, because I think in Clockwork 2 they can take over the government and you've got to try and win it back again. And just like in the multiplayer game, the solitaire player has their own player aid, iconography, parliamentary order, and on the other side we've got the elections and bills. Here are all the wooden pieces you're going to be needing. And for some reason, some baggies. There are 4 bricks of standard size playing cards and 1 smaller tarot size deck. But let's have a look at those. So I've opened them up, split them into their decks. So we've got the politician deck here. Here are the conservative heaps and the liberals. So you'll pick one of those to play if you're playing solo. We've then got the bills. So we've got conservative bills. Again, not quite sure what all this means, but from my quick look through, if you're a conservative, getting through conservative bills is going to be more difficult because of the opposition you're going to get from the Liberals. And the same if you're a Liberal Prime Minister. Trying to get these through will be more difficult because of the Conservatives going against you. Now these cards are your typical punched out GMT cards. They're a bit sticky together, so I will be sleeving these, make them easier to manipulate. These, I understand though, will be the easier bills to get through because you're going to have support from both sides of the house. So there's quite a lot of those because I think these will be picked more times than the others. There are lots of different Windsor Castle Act to improve Windsor Castle. Oh dear. Landlord and tenant. So there's lots of actual acts that were around in them days. Nice deck of event cards. Ooh, do they really? Charming. Cholera outbreak in London. These are bad things generally that will happen to the Prime Minister. And whoever that is has to decide how to deal with it. You can ignore it and bad things will happen, or you can pay your action cubes to make it not quite so bad, or turn it to your advantage. But then you haven't got so many action cubes to do other things. And then there's a supporters deck. Show you a few of those. Love the contemporary pictures and paintings. And there's this uncertainty deck, which I think you use when a bill is passed, or you think a bill is passed, and you pick one of these to see if at the last moment it doesn't scrape past the finishing post. And then the clockwork, I keep wanting to say orange after it, but has its own event deck. And its own supporters deck. Find out how those work when we get to play this. I think this is just for the multiplayer game. These are backbencher cards. Father of the House, telling you what they do. Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Party Leader, Campaign Chairman, what they can do. Chief Whip. Oh, government backbencher resigned. How that works. A pact between the two parties. Doesn't seem to work out very well in real life. Privy Councillor, Opposition Leader, Opposition backbencher, the Chief Whip, Privy Councillor, and the Campaign Chairman with the Government Backbencher debate card. Ooh. Then lastly, we've got some tarot-sized cards for the clockwork mechanism. This is when the clockwork or AI bot is the Prime Minister. But normally I think you'd be using this, so you're going to pick one of these as your opposition. So if you pick, you're going to play a Conservative Prime Minister, you will use the orange opposition leaders to have the Liberal Party against you. There we are. Quite a lot of cards. And lastly, there's the mounted game board. So let's have a look at that. Here's the mounted game board. Nice size. Up here we've got the score track. You get to 100 victory points, you win. Here are the 8 sectors of the electorate. Sectors such as the gentry, the farmers, got the workers down here, middle class, and the 2 parties. And these 2 tracks are used to see how well each party is doing within that sector. Here's the election projections. So this is like a sort of popularity tracker that tells you how many seats you possibly will win in an election. So if the Conservative tracker is on, say here, 31, that means you're projected to get 416 MPs as opposed to only 242 for the Liberals. Over here we've got the Queen's favour track. The higher up it goes, the better. We've got 2 sort of places for the pact card, which I think I showed you in the deck, and the government backbencher resigned. Space there. Down at the bottom, we've got the spaces for the 3 bills that you can put out at one time. That, if you saw it in the bag of wooden bits, was a big round election disc. That goes there. And over here, we've got your MP sort of breakdown. How many altogether, and how many of those are moderates or mad partisans. I think the more you have of these, the more sort of extreme bills you can get through. So at the start of the game, you start with 330, split up into 270 moderates and 60 partisans. There we are. That is everything in the box. So this has been an Open the Box, an unboxing of GMT's brand new political game, Prime Minister, designed by Paul Hellyer. Well, something a bit different to get your teeth into, and I hope you enjoyed and found it interesting. If you did, and you haven't done so already, it would be great if you would consider subscribing to the channel. Really does help. Pushing the like button, the thumbs up underneath the video, helps tremendously as well. And if you want to be informed of other content the channel uploads, then push the bell. Leave a comment. Let me know, what do you think? Looks an interesting game to me, but tell me your thoughts. I love to read them. Thanks as always to my subscribers. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you sticking with me. And one last thing, if you wish to support the channel a little bit further, well, you can. You can buy the channel a coffee, and there's a link in the description for that. Or if you wish, you can push the super thanks button underneath the video. Either of which, if you decide to do that, really helps the channel to keep ticking along, so thank you. Okay, until the next video, as always, you take care and goodbye.